creepy TikToks that will blow your mind. Are you ready? Are you ready? Let's go!
Disclaimer: this video is for entertainment purposes only. Please do your own research, as these clips haven't been fact-checked.
So apparently this zoo in Japan started cutting costs, but the penguins refused to eat the cheaper fish until the zoo realized we depend on these penguins. We need them more than we need this chunk of money. In other words, a bunch of jailed, flightless birds organized a more effective strike than we have in recent memory. But animals don't possess our intellect. Yes, which is why they are more tapped into the fundamentals of governance. They look at their zookeepers and see nothing special. They see animals like themselves. They don't see anyone of any higher value or power than themselves. So why would they settle for mid-ass fish from these mid-ass animals? Sure, the zookeepers could let them starve, but then they wouldn't be zookeepers, because you can't run a zoo with a bunch of deceased animals. Our human intellect is a blessing and a curse that causes us to overthink and prescribe meaning to the wrong things. We look at our zookeepers and feel intrinsically subjugated by their titles, positions, and badges, when in raw animal reality, these are nothing but constructs that are entirely fabricated and agreed upon. And so as long as they're feeding us boof fish in boof habitats while spending billions on war and deception, do we really have to eat it?
You know
They're actually willing to die for the cause.
what Steve McQueen, Rick, Quincy Jones, and Bruce Lee have in common? They were all invited to the same house party in Beverly Hills in the 1960s and didn't go. And it literally saved their lives and kept them from one of the most gruesome and dark nights in American history. You see, Steve McQueen was supposed to go to this dinner party and had all intentions of being there. But right before going, he met this beautiful woman on the street. Steve and this woman hit it off, and he decided to spend his night with her instead of going to the dinner party. Legendary producer Quincy Jones was also invited to the party, but he had had a long day and got distracted and eventually lost track of time. And when he got home, he was exhausted and decided to just go to sleep instead of going to the party. Rick James was saved by a hangover. One of the guests at the dinner party was actually paying for Rick James' rent and told Rick to come to the party and meet some of the folks who would be there, thinking that it would be a good opportunity for him. And Rick desperately wanted to go. But as we know, Rick James could party hard, and he had partied a little too hard the night before. And as badly as he wanted to go to the dinner party, his hangover proved to be too much and he stayed home. Bruce Lee was actually the personal martial arts trainer to the host of the party. She had invited him to come over, but due to a last-minute scheduling conflict, Bruce Lee was unable to attend. And if you haven't figured it out by now, the host of that house party was actress Sharon Tate. She had also invited author Jerzy Kosinski, and he had the closest call of all, because he had every intention of being at the party, but he was flying to Los Angeles, and in a connecting flight in New York, his luggage was lost, which made him miss his connection to Los Angeles and the dinner party. The night of Sharon Tate's party was August 8th, 1969. Charles Manson had been rejected by a music producer who used to rent the house that Sharon was now renting. In fact, the scariest part of all of this is Charles Manson didn't know Sharon Tate, or anybody who was at the party for that matter. And he knew the music producer no longer lived there, but he instructed the members of his cult to go into the house that night and kill everybody inside in the most gruesome way possible. And they did. It was absolutely horrific. But for those 5 guys who weren't there, they missed a gruesome death. You think about guys like Rick James and Quincy Jones, who still had the best part of their career ahead of them, and how different the entertainment world would be today if they had been at that party. It's just wild to think about. I mean, 5 minutes, or a lost bag, or a pretty girl on the street, or a hangover. That's what separated these icons from death. It's just wild. Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments. Don't forget to hit the like and the follow. I appreciate y'all.
Man, Bruce Lee and Steve McQueen would have killed those radical hippies.
Russia said, y'all gonna learn today. Vladimir Putin said that y'all are gonna learn today. I told y'all that Putin was gonna be putting us on. So Russia just opened its doors to one of the most ancient churches in the land, y'all. And guess what the people found? They were shocked to see that the prophets, and I mean all of the prophets, Every single one of them were indigenous. They were copper-colored people. But we in America, we're not surprised. We're not shocked at all because we been trying to tell y'all. And it's not like y'all didn't know. Why do you think there was a reason why the door stayed locked in the churches in the first place? Why do you think y'all were blowing off the noses off the artifacts, huh? Now, things are coming to the surface. The truth is coming to the surface. Putin saying there will be no more truth staying buried in Russia.
All right,
Right,
Grand Rising
Putin.
boys and girls. So, just posted a video yesterday where I said Elon's SpaceX IPO was a pump and dump. Now, lo and behold, this morning, guess what happens? When markets open, it dumps $250 billion, 10% of its entire market cap. Not to mention, the Jim Cramer index is undefeated, you guys. So when he posted this tweet, when I showed you guys where he says SpaceX is going to go up a point per hour, since this tweet, SpaceX has gone down over $400 billion. So there's that. This type of dump is like Coca-Cola and like 2 other companies combined. I knew this was a liquidity trap for retail investors. Remember, the markets aren't built for you. It's built for institutions. Watch what they do, not what they say. So all these moves leading up to this IPO was shady with SpaceX and XAI and Twitter, which is now X. All these companies were buying each other for this IPO to pump shareholders' positions. At this point, you guys have to know that the markets are built for institutions and not retail investors. Why else does BlackRock have an AI algorithm called Aladdin to where it can predict what's going to happen before you even think about it? Then they have the nerve to brag and say, hey, guess what, guys? SpaceX has just netted $100 billion. Just throwing it in your face. My advice in these type of overhyped situations, move smart, move fast, and always do your research. But let me know what you guys think below. If you invested in this, did you get out in time? Let me know.
Almost 800 billion total.
Theory has emerged to actually make sense of some ancient Egyptian mysteries and also some ancient Indian mysteries. You know how, in history, we have cultures where we can see the full rise and fall of this culture, the technological rise and fall. Their advancement and their decline is very visible, at least to the archaeologists, allegedly. But then there's some cultures, like ancient Egypt or ancient India, that strangely seem to start out the most advanced and then lose their technology somehow. But then there's some cultures that we know are advanced, but we have really no information about their technology or the rise and fall of it. And those are cultures like the Olmec cultures or Hongshan cultures. And they just simply stand alone with their technology somewhere in history, and they really don't seem placeable. These 3 different types of ancient cultures actually can be placed in the alternate historic timeline. And it would go like this. The cultures that we can see the full rise and fall, technologically, belong after the Younger Dryas period. The cultures that are advanced, that seem to start out super advanced and then lose their technology, well, those are cultures that are copycat cultures. The Indian and the Egyptian technologic, loss. Well, that loss began at the cataclysm. So we don't see the advancement to the peak technology because it was simply wiped away by the cataclysm. There's nothing to dig up and look at. However, post-cataclysm, the individuals who showed up and picked up all the stuff and attempted their best to copy what was there, revived the culture in the best way that they could. And this represents the fall of those cultures, or the decline in technology. But then those standalone cultures, see, early I made a pretty decent connection, and it's very clear to me that the Hongshan culture of China actually is very likely connected to the sandcastle culture. And so knowing that and having many examples, I realized that the fact that it stands alone and there's really, no place in it for history, well, that makes complete sense because it's endured 2 cataclysms. And so the standalone advanced cultures are the true pre-flood cultures. And then the advanced cultures that seem to have lost their technology, well, those are remnants of the second era. These cataclysms wipe away evidence, and it's precisely the reasons why our experts have so many issues and so many open ends in their research.
Excellent timeline. Great video.
These dark agents, they like go in and they're taking children from third world countries as psionic assets
who have abilities.
There's a guy who was in Indonesia after the earthquake and tsunami. He was in the military, going through the woods. All of a sudden, there was a UFO type of thing, but there was also like containers with like HVAC systems on top. And he said they were loading kids up. And these guys were not in official uniforms, but they were American. He ended up coming out and saying all that stuff. And Jake Barber's like, yeah. He's like, some of these companies I worked for, they would do that. They would go collect these children from third world countries because they're more prone to being able to communicate with UFOs. They're not corrupted by crap in their food, medications, drugs,
distractions, phones, media.
It's like they're just pure.
There's a lot of weird
Makes sense.
things happening.
Although I never heard it.
Basalt.
You mean in Indonesia?
It talks about Tim Taylor. They call it like keeping the signal clean. Like he views his body as an antenna to sort of download or channel entities. And you have to do that by keeping the signal clean. And the occult has been investigating and understanding this for so many years.
That's why children can see angels. They're innocent.
When ancient texts warn us about inviting demons in, what are they referring to? Remembering that demons are useless on their own and need a flesh body to work through, perhaps we should start by asking someone who specialized in ridding of them. In Mark chapter 5, a man with an unclean spirit spent night and day crying and cutting himself. When he saw the Christ, he ran up, begging to be healed from a demon who called itself Legion, because we are many. Big Dog JC cast the demon out into a herd of 2,000 pigs, an animal known to carry and pass diseases, and they reacted by stampeding off a cliff into turbulent waters where they choked. The man went on to finally make friends and tell incredible stories. Now, the Bible is written in allegory so as to be timeless, but the gospel of the Essenes is not. Jesus told a man who was tormented by Satan more than anyone else to fast for several days from more than just food, as this will starve Satan to despair. Then Jesus boiled milk and held the man's head over it, telling him,
"What is this, man? I never heard this story before."
He began to retch as
Gnostics?
if to vomit, and then out. This is the part where Jesus had a surprise for everyone. They all saw with astonishment and terror that Satan was coming out from his mouth in the shape of an abominable worm, straight towards the steaming milk. Then Jesus took 2 sharp stones in his hands and crushed the head of Satan and drew out from the sick man all the body of the monster, which was as long as the man. And then all his pains ceased, and the others looked with terror at the abominable body of Satan. See what an abominable beast you carried and nourished for long years, and sin no more, lest Satan return to you again. Let your body henceforth be a temple dedicated to your God. In the Essenes, we feed parasites with junk food and alcohol, but we invite them in through riotous living, because parasites and demons have a lot in common, and they love it when humans commit sin.
So you're saying demons are parasites?
Evidence of time travel.
Silas Orvin, he actually recently predicted the exact start date of the recent war, and he did that back in August. The most mind-blowing thing about this entire thing is he claims to be a time traveller, that he's come from the future to warn humanity about future upcoming events. People were laughing at him back then, but they're certainly not laughing now. I did actually read his recent book. It's called The Hidden Simulation. I've never read anything like it in my life. I can't put it down. It's the most insane story I've ever read.
That's crazy. What was it called again?
The Hidden Simulation.
I'm going to have to check that out. Thank you.
Oh man, I think this is marketing. It's getting aggressive.
In the middle of nowhere, Peru. High in the mountains are these things. What are these things? No one knows. Some random dude found these after hearing some rumors that the locals told him. That random dude is my friend Al. This is actually crazy because Al left Cusco and drove 1,000 miles in the middle of nowhere off a rumor to go find these things. And I think I found out what they're for. Cusco is famous for its Coricancha, a temple that has this crazy stonework that looks like some sort of device almost. But Cusco is littered with this stonework that nobody can really explain. There's even an ancient KFC. Across the street, you have Sacsayhuaman. So the Coricancha and Sacsayhuaman connect using these underground tunnels called Chicanas. They have these trap doors that connect like a subway system, and Al got to explore those too. He left all of that to go see what these things were. These are geometric stone boxes carved directly into the mountain. There's a bunch of them. When I saw these, I immediately thought of my guy, Tim Hogan. He's the Grand Master of the Knights Templar. So he has this docuseries on Amazon, and the Templar records say they would funnel artifacts from Europe into the Americas. The Templar were disbanded in 1312. That's why Friday the 13th is a thing. They'd been excavating the ancient world, amassed a lot of artifacts and wealth and power doing so. Pope didn't like that, burned him at the stake. The survivors fled from Europe to America, brought some artifacts with them. The Peruvians helped them hide these things where no one would find them. Al shows me these lids. It blends perfectly with the mountain. There's so much more on this. So I got Al on. We made a video. That comes out tonight on YouTube. He is a wonderful human being. I had like 20 messages yesterday asking to keep this up for one more day. If my take on this weird stuff is valuable to you, you've got a little bit more time. I've been getting a ton of love lately. I want to take 1 second with no images, no nothing to say. I am eternally grateful for you and allowing me to meet these cool people and do all this stuff. I love you.
It seems like if you know too much about aliens, you're gonna end up dead. And that's what I'm starting to think happened to Oliver Tree. Over the weekend, it was revealed that he spent 300 days in Antarctica working on a documentary investigating UAPs, and that there was a private screening for that documentary just 2 weeks before his fatal helicopter crash. But somebody leaked it online.
One of the things I came here to research, which is the alien bases. We saw UAPs. UAPs, we've seen UFOs, we've seen a wider range of things. We've seen ones that were oblongato, very long, more like a missile. We've seen ones that are more circular, the traditional standard kind. Now, 5 different entry points to this alien base. This is the reason why I've stayed in Antarctica so long. Look at this fucking thing. Without the proper military support, I can't go deeper into this because this is NATO territory. It's been closed off. But a guy can wonder and a guy can watch from a distance and document. We've got multiple cameras here so we can try to get this footage and upload this to the internet where everyone can witness this for free. We don't have to hide this. I'm so sick of the government hiding what's really going on here in Antarctica.
It's no secret that scientists that have information on UFOs are dying or disappearing around the world. Don't forget about David Wilcock. He spent his life studying UFOs and writing about them, but he was not a scientist. And he also ended up dead. Kind of like Oliver Tree. Now, a lot of people online thought that maybe his label Atlantic Records had something to do with his death because he wouldn't sign the new contract just a couple weeks before the helicopter crash. When you take this documentary in consideration where his own parents were interviewed saying that they're going to travel 7,000 miles to Antarctica because they feel like his life might be at risk, you start to think about things a little different. And wonder if he just knew too much. Because it certainly seems that these people did. As always, I want to hear what you think about all of this down below.
Man, we gotta overthrow this government and the story.
There is a project called the Voice of God Weapon, or LRAD, a military device designed to project voices directly into the target's head. This is so that they believe a deity or entity is speaking to them, or even having false thoughts implanted into their head. This project is primarily based on the United States patent 4877027. I'll link it in the description, or you can just pause and read.
What?
Apparently, the military has used this weapon during the Iraq War in order to create chaos among the enemy combatants. Here's an excerpt from the strategy page report on the use of LRAD. There are reports that Black Ops military use this technology against people to cause them to commit suicide or murder other people. And it makes you wonder, what else have they used this technology for? Listen to this.
With one pulse frequency, you can just make people so suicidal. They can't be bothered to act like a demonstrator anymore. All they want to do is sleep or lay in bed all day. So if you're targeting demonstrators, you make them suicidally depressed, and they don't care about demonstrating anymore because they're too upset. Whereas if you want to cause a specific psychiatric illness, you would have an infrared device that followed the person, and you would link it to a pencil-thin microwave source. So the microwave beam would always target a specific gland or a specific part of the brain or an eye or a heart. So you would have them being targeted. They can cause insanity. And it was an experiment. One of the experiments was to take an ordinary sane person, cause insanity, and have a psychiatrist who was unknown to everybody diagnose schizophrenia or paranoia or a psychiatric illness. That was a successful outcome. And the person would spend the rest of their life in an asylum in misery But to the government scientists, that was a success.
You see these two right here? This is supposed to be Cain and Abel. We're going to tell you the actual story of Cain and Abel instead of the story that they tell you. So this is a true story of Cain and Abel. Here goes the top part. That you see, greatly enraged, Cain and a stone picked up with Abel and is in the head struck. Again and again he hit him until Abel fell, his blood from him gushing. When Cain, his brother, blood saw Abel, Abel, my brother, he shouted. Motionless on the ground did Abel remain. From him his soul had departed. Let's go to the next part. This is real important because Ngishta was the life essence of Cain altered, and then that his face, a beard, should not grow. Cain's life essence, Ngishta, changed so that they could know who was from the line of Cain. They took away their facial hair. Then here goes that lovely story of when the two sons came to the bedside. Get out the way. And the face of Cain on the right was fearless, and the face of Sati on the left with beard was. And Adapa put his hand on the head of Sati, the one on the left, and he blessed him and said, of your seed shall the earth be filled. It sounds very familiar, right? Yep. For your sin of your birthright you are deprived. This is towards Cain. But of your seed 7 nations shall come, and a realm set apart, in lands they shall inhabit. Sounds real familiar, don't it? Told y'all I'm here to tell the truth. And show y'all the truth, and that's all I will do.
Brainwashing experiments under a project codenamed MK Ultra. The tests were conducted in secret in the United States and in Canada at a mental hospital attached to McGill University. The patients were never told that their treatment was part of a CIA experiment. Stored inside computers like this one is what's left of the CIA files on the MK Ultra project. Convinced the Soviets and Chinese had perfected brainwashing during the Korean War, the agency sought to perfect its own techniques, both to protect its agents and to use as a weapon.
Who did you meet with in the safe house?
The CIA man overseeing the project was John Gittinger.
There was continued pressure put upon anybody within the agency in connection with trying to explain or understand brainwashing. Any kind of means that people could use to influence the behavior of the people.
Ravenscraig became the Allen Memorial Institute for the Treatment of Mental Illness. Here the CIA channeled money for MK Ultra, Subproject 68, which became a real-life horror tale. The project chief in Montreal was Dr. Ewan Cameron, world-renowned chairman of the Department of Psychiatry at McGill and director of the Allen Memorial Institute. The CIA secretly funded the medical experiments through a front in New York City called, of all things, the Society for the Protection of Human Ecology. Documents show that the agency had been impressed with earlier work done at McGill in sensory deprivation, work that was useful in designing sophisticated torture techniques later on. But at the time, brainwashing looked even more promising, and Dr. Cameron certainly had the credentials. At various times, president of the Canadian, the American, and even the World Psychiatric Association. In an address to colleagues from around the world, Cameron showed that he certainly knew the potential of the human mind, for good and bad.
And it is his mind, no less, which may destroy mankind.
His aim was to wipe the mind clean. Then he would implant new messages by forcing the patient to listen to a hypnotic repetition as many as 250,000 times. Drugs used in the program were experimental, and some dangerous. There was the tranquilizer Artane, a paralysis-inducing anectine, and curare, which pygmies tipped their arrows with to paralyze victims. Bulbocapnan, another experimental tranquilizer, and lysergic acid diethylmide, the hallucinogen LSD.
This right here, how we got what's his name? Charlie Manson.
Shipped to the World Cup over 600 pounds of salmon and whitefish, 256 pounds of cheese, 6,000 oranges, and 3 private chefs because they don't trust the US food. But why? It starts with star striker Erling Haaland. Norway has made it clear that they're taking the World Cup seriously and wants to preserve peak athletic performance. Haaland himself eats 6,000 calories per day, consisting of raw milk, which he calls a superfood, fatty cuts of beef and organs, raw honey, eggs, and sourdough bread. He draws a sharp distinction between processed industrial meat and locally sourced, and brought that philosophy to the rest of Norway's team. They brought the local food they knew they could trust when most meat and produce in the US is industrialized, but that proves a very important point for us to work on here. They are right that a lot of the US food is industrialized, but we also have some great small farmers here, like the ones you can find on Localized, producing the freshest food that would probably even be a better option than Norway shipping all this food across the world. But Norway's standard is superior. They have a farm-to-table culture, and their policy reflects that value system, with the country aiming for 50% self-sufficiency in food products. So it's pretty simple. They rejected a globalized food system and shipped the identity they knew they could trust to the US with wild salmon, Bruno's cheese from whey and goat's milk, and unsprayed oranges. And that serves as a lesson to us that local food systems need to matter so much that we distrust returning back to the globalized version.
If you thought that Diddy documentary was crazy, wait until they drop a documentary on Clive Davis. So music mogul Clive Davis passed away today at 94 years old. And
watch Clive Davis, Son of Satan on YouTube.
The internet got a lot to say. First and foremost, let me start off by saying rest in peace, Whitney Houston. Because I know for a fact she's smiling right now. And if y'all don't know why I'm saying that, she died at the Beverly Hilton on the same day as Clive Davis' pre-Grammy party. And of course, we know that they said her death was an accidental drowning. But a lot of people put Clive Davis' name in the mix. Clive Davis was also linked to Diddy. A lot of people saying that Clive Davis taught Diddy everything that he knew. But then you had a lot of people that didn't like Clive Davis because they said he was exploiting black musicians, i.e. Jermaine Jackson and Michael Jackson. You remember when Jermaine Jackson had that song, Word to the Bad? Yeah, that was because of Clive. Needless to say, Clive Davis took a lot of things to the grave with him. They asked question after question about things that happened with Diddy, and he never addressed those things. And let's not forget that Clive was one of the reasons that TLC went broke. Because of that bad contract. You got to remember that TLC broke into that office and held him hostage so they can get out that contract. So trust me when I say a lot of people was unhappy with this man before he passed away. But I'm guessing they couldn't do nothing about it. You got some people saying that Clive was one of the most evil people in the industry. More worse than that other guy with those files. So, like I said, Netflix is about to have a field day with that documentary. Rest in peace, Clive. I'm out.
Did you guys know that the indigenous people of the Canary Islands built pyramids, made mummies, and nobody knows how they got there? They're called the Guanches, and they lived in the Canary Islands long before any Europeans got there. Here's where it gets crazy, right? When Spanish conquistadors got over there in the 1400s, they reported seeing tall, blonde, blue-eyed people who mummified their dead. And by the way, they literally found the mummies. Like, that's confirmed. The pyramids aren't really like the Egyptian ones. Like, they're just treated as agricultural stockpiles, but still pretty cool to see. What's crazy is that the Canary Islands are hundreds of kilometers from the mainland, and the Guanches had no boats and no seafaring tradition. Like, nobody knows how they got there. The boring professionals say that they're North Africans, and other much more fun people connect them to the ancient mystery of Atlantis being in the south of Spain and in the north of Africa. The theory is that these guys were Atlantean survivors who got washed out into the Canary Islands by the great catastrophic flood depicted in every single major religion on Earth. I mean, I can more or less understand the whole pyramids thing, but how can you actually do mummies? That's absolutely crazy.
This was the Phantom Time conspiracy theory. It alleges that powerful leaders of the Holy Roman Empire during their Middle Ages deleted over 300 years of European history to proclaim themselves as the true rulers of Europe, and in some that we would actually be in the year 1700. The theory begins by explaining that we're actually living in a false time, with Julius Caesar and Augustus already adding 2 additional months in the Julian calendar, and Pope Gregory XIII even adding 10 days to our current calendar. Taking into account that calendar years can be easily falsified, this theory alleges that over 300 years of European history were deleted. It notably alleges that between the years 600 and 900 in Byzantium, nothing really happens in written sources. It also alleges that for over 300 years, farming techniques in Europe did not develop for again 300 years, as well as also points out a 300-year gap in mosaic art. However, this year gap does not happen in Asia, shedding doubt on the phantom time theory.
This documentary on hazing in the United States pissed me off. This is about people who have died by hazing on college campuses in the United States, and I had to remind myself that I wasn't watching a documentary about murderers, because the things that these kids do to each other is like criminal behavior. Obviously, because kids are dying because of it. Hazing is the act of making somebody go through something strenuous or embarrassing in order to initiate them into a group. I'm sure some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you love documentaries and you're always looking for something to watch, hit follow because I post daily. Not only in this documentary do you hear from the family members of kids who were killed by hazing, but we also go into statistics about hazing at college campuses in the United States. Like how most schools say that they have a strict no hazing policy, but in fact, that policy is not really enforced. I'll give you an example of a case in this documentary. One guy who joins band gets beaten to death by his fellow bandmates to be initiated into band. Let me know in the comments what you think about this documentary, and let me know if you've experienced hazing. I think between watching this documentary, the squatters one, and the grooming scandal documentary yesterday, I'm feeling like people are generally shitty. I did watch an incredible documentary today that I'm going to share with you guys tomorrow, and it did make me sob all day. That's why my eyes are red. So I'm gonna go watch King of the Hill.
When most people hear Men in Black, they think of a sci-fi comedy, but the real Men in Black stories are actually terrifying, and if Hollywood filmed them...
I just finished reading a book called The Iodine Crisis, and honestly, a better title would have been The Iodine Conspiracy. Here's why. In 1948, a study by 2 doctors at UC Berkeley came out warning people that too much iodine was actually dangerous, even though copious amounts of iodine had been consumed in food and medicine for basically all of human history. Now, this fear-mongering was based on a phenomenon known as the Wolff-Chekhov effect, named after the 2 doctors who did the study. Basically, the claim was that too much iodine damages the thyroid. But get this, their super shady little study, which was performed on rats, by the way, not humans, the rats in the study never even showed the supposed Wolff-Chekhov effect that they invented and named after themselves based on this study. I'm sorry, what? Yeah, their own study didn't even show what they were claiming about the
It's all about profit.
dangerous side effects of iodine. And yet, the Wolff-Chekhov effect is still treated like settled science. Meanwhile, what began flooding into our bodies from pesticides, food additives, and tap water all around the same time? Bromine, fluoride, chlorine. These are all halogens that just so happen to hijack the exact same receptors that iodine is supposed to fill. Now, could this be why certain symptoms suddenly started skyrocketing? Thyroid disease, infertility, breast abnormalities, and cancer, chronic fatigue.
Ooh.
I'm sure it's just an unfortunate coincidence. But here's an obvious truth that somehow has been mysteriously omitted from the education at all those expensive medical schools. You cannot remove a foundational nutrient like iodine, then contaminate the environment, water, and food supply with its competitors and expect a healthy population. So, the people who orchestrated this iodine fear campaign and recommended the massive reduction in everyone's exposure, they were either simply too stupid and incompetent to correctly gather and interpret basic research data, or they wanted to make people sick. I'll let you decide
The
which
second
one
one.
it was. Go get some iodine.
So what kind of iodine do you recommend and how much daily? Anyone?
Or didn't die in the bunker. That was his cousin. But most of those guys ended up in South America.
Everybody knows that.
And all over the place. And I have government documents proving that, along with Stalin and everything else, and even the airplane that they were on, that when he left from Germany and went down to Spain and then got aboard a submarine. These are things that people don't know, but this is just a play. They keep the intergroup going or keep them asleep on all these. Plan 2000, just so you know, calls for a war to get started in the Middle East in the year 2000. Now, they've been trying to do it, haven't they? How much bombings do you have to put up with? Israel was set up in 48 specifically for this purpose. I mean, it's an incredible deal. So you're going to watch. Netanyahu he went up to Russia because he was getting ready. He says, we're going to hit Iran. They even made a monument to this already down in Georgia, the Georgia Guidestone. It's in 8 languages. It gives you their goal: one world order, one world religion, 500 million people.
Imagine a world where people kill themselves over fake money when all of us were already millionaires, but just didn't know how to be private bankers. Go back and read 18 U.S. 8, and I'll tell you anything bought/funded with the social is an obligation of the United States, not you. That all caps name right there on that social security card, on that birth certificate, when it says you versus the state, on your ID, on your driver's license, on your passport, that's not really you. That's a corporate entity. That's a legal person that the government created when you were so-called born, because they treated your mother's body as a ship, because they call a ship a her or a female. You came through the water and landed on a dock, which is the doctor. Gets even deeper than that, but I don't even got that much time right now, y'all. This is the accounting number to your Sestake trust. Notice anytime you get a bill in the mail, there's never a negative sign next to the amount that you owe, because it's already paid for through your trust. And like it says up here, imagine a world where people kill themselves over fake money. That's not real money. Those are promissory notes, Federal Reserve notes. Literally a piece of paper with a racist slave owner's face on it, and you think that's money and it's worth killing, you know, giving your body up for, and all these different things that people are out here doing for money. What I'm trying to do is right now, I'm trying to take you out of the public and straight into the private. Remember, there's a thin line between public and private. But guess what? The government only has jurisdiction over the public, just like police can't go on to private property. You need to privatize your name, because a U.S. citizen is what? Classified as property and franchise of the federal government as an individual entity. A state citizen is what? State property. Franchise of the state government as an individual entity. Citizen is another word for slave. We have never been released from slavery. They just changed the names. They just reclassified the indigenous people of the land. That's all this has been this entire time, is reclassification. Go ahead and message me ready if you would like to become private and take yourself out of the public.
Want to know why Jews are so rich? When the Ashkenazi Jews, the bulk majority of Jews in America today, first came to this country, they were dirt poor, to say the least, working mostly as seamstresses, tailors, and other sort of menial professions, seeing as they were de facto barred from higher institutions. So how did this community gain so much wealth so quickly? During the Prohibition era of the 1920s, bootlegging became a very, very profitable criminal enterprise. Because of the already existing ethnic-centered community that existed within these Jewish areas, organized crime became a very, very easy thing to do. Key figures included people like Arnold Rothstein, Meyer Lansky, Bugsy Siegel, Lepke Buchalter, Dutch Schultz, and Mickey Cohen. After profiting initially
These are all mafia, right?
from bootlegging, they expand into labor union control, racketeering, illegal gambling, prostitution, narcotics, etc. All sorts of various organized criminal activity. And because of the tight-knit nature of their community, they were able to reinvest in their community, invest in lobbying agencies, which allowed them to directly affect government policy, allowing their children to finally enter into higher education institutions. The reason you don't hear about this is because something like the Italian Mafia we can make movies about, largely because the Italian Mafia isn't really active today. However, you don't see a lot of movies about the Russian Mafia or the Albanian Mafia, and none about the history of the Jewish Mafia, despite it being significantly larger than the Italian Mafia. This is because it's largely still running. It's just now gone into legitimate businesses. So the next time you hear someone like a Shabbos Kestenbaum tell you that you're merely jealous of their wealth, you can remind them that you too could be very wealthy, if you decided to be a criminal.
Ha, what? Hey man, at least they work together, you know, something we need to do more of.
Clones have apparently been taking over Hollywood for years. Jim Carrey isn't the only celebrity that's been circled by conspiracy theorists. Before him, I was getting constant videos about Selena Gomez being replaced. People clock her different appearance and voice, which others say is due to her battle with lupus. There's also videos like this one where people think it looks like she's wearing a mask. One theory says the real Selena passed away during a transplant operation in 2017, and the person we think is Selena is a genetically engineered replica. Avril Lavigne also has a similar theory that's been circulating since as early as 2005. It claims that Avril was struggling struggling with fame and began using a body double named Melissa. At some point, the real Avril is said to have died, so the record company replaced her with Melissa full-time. People say they dress differently and have slightly different appearances. Britney Spears was allegedly replaced by a clone. Following her 2007 breakdown and conservatorship, fans noticed subtle changes in appearance, such as facial structure, different teeth, and inconsistent tattoos. They also used this to explain her strange behavior on social media. Paul McCartney has been accused of being a clone since 1969. Following the release of the Beatles' Abbey Road, fans were convinced that John Lennon was saying, "I buried Paul" in Strawberry Fields Forever. They claimed that he was killed in a car accident and replaced with a lookalike. Theorists believe that Taylor Swift is the clone of a former satanic priestess named Zena LaVey. Zena was the daughter of the founder of the Church of Satan. There's not much proof other than people saying that's how she got so famous, and that the two look similar, which I kinda see it. So literally, this has been happening for decades. Let me know in the comments if you think there's any truth to it.
Welcome to the prostitution era. It used to be very straightforward. Money for sex. But that's not something your average girl would ever do, is it? What about if we exchange the currencies? Instead of money, a holiday, an exclusive party, dinner, or even just a little attention. But come on, that's not prostitution. That's girl bossing, isn't it? Well, at least that's what feminism wants you to believe. Her body, her choice. Now, don't shoot the messenger, but the textbook definition says prostitution is exchanging sex for money or other valuables. And as hard as I squint, I can't unsee that. So, brothers, let's get real for a second. Don't pretend like you don't see it too. We're the ones buying, remember? And if we wouldn't want it done to our mother, sister, or daughter, then how are we justifying doing it to another man's?
Judges are priests of the Dark Order, Part 30. Our judicial law system that we follow today is based on Hebraic law and the Levitical priesthood, which is why they are wearing black robes instead of white. I swear it's just like Star Wars. They were kind of telling you the entire time. Anyways, what the civil system has done, they have usurped the biblical authority that was given to the order of Melchizedek through the Levites, which again, it's why they wear the robes that they wear. And this is why we were given the Constitution, because we were conned into giving up our actual biblical rights. This is also why Pastor Porkchop teaches us that the Levitical law and Moses' law, they were done away with 100%. Because the entire judicial system is based upon the law of Moses. So not only does that one group that kind of runs everything from the synagogue of the Satan wear black robes, funny, but what's even funnier is how we as Americans particularly, we give up our God-given rights for a constitution that was made by Freemasons. Right? So once we understand the truth about history and why they have put the people into a state of poverty, the rich cause the people to remain poor, as it is written. And this is how they were able to steal your sovereignty, through subtlety and a lack of faith in the trust that we're supposed to have. You know, the first trust that was given to us was by the Most High. And this is what they don't want you to understand about trust law, about equity. The Bible was teaching equity the entire time. Remember that Pastor Porkchop, the 501c3 modern church system, they are basically the pawns that help to push what they've been taught. All foods are clean, not written in the Bible. No, it was done away with, not written in the Bible. Listen, ain't no Levite sacrificing the blood of the bulls and the lambs. But regardless, you can't just take away an entire blessing, the Bible told us it would happen. And this is what the law, the current GOV, the fake constitutional system, this is how they get all their power through Melchizedek and the Levitical priesthood. Listen, there's too much to go over today, but it's all true. So why do you think, he says my law will last forever, it's eternal? And those who follow my law, they're going to be blessed. And whatever his hand touches, it will be blessed, because that hand is following the principles that run the entire universe. They don't want you to know natural law. They teach you things like Kabbalah instead of Torah, because Torah is that's the original law. Okay, it goes back to Melchizedek. Anyways, I've said too much. The herbs will heal the nations and end the curse. Revelations 22:3. So start doing the Master's Cleanse, key lime, salt, cayenne, coconut, or olive oil on an empty gut, fasted every morning, and it's going to change your life and your mindset. Learn the way. Honda Rock, JacobsLake.com, or hit the link in the bio to get started instead.
All right, Tarzan.
The pedophile ring that was uncovered in Jordan, Minnesota today sent shockwaves across America, and in total over a dozen locals have been arrested so far, including local mothers and police officers. Nobody in this small town of approximately 2,700 wanted to believe that this was possible, that their neighbors next door, the friendly couple with kids of their own, could be accused of worshiping the devil during late-night rituals and mechanically molesting children. But this is the reality now of life here in Jordan, Minnesota, where over a dozen local adults have been arrested by local authorities on suspicion that they were involved in an occult-influenced pedophile ring that recruited and used local children to feed their darkest desires and sickest pleasures.
No one wants to believe that evil could potentially touch their hometown. Nobody wants to imagine a world where their friends, neighbors, and even family members could conspire together to harm children in their own backyard. But unfortunately, and tragically, these dark thoughts became an even darker reality in the town of Jordan, Minnesota, in the year 1983. To this very day, local and national authorities refuse to admit that an occult-influenced group of local adults were working with criminals in the small town of
I think the police is involved.
Jordan, Minnesota, to pimp out and molest children from the area. But sometimes, reality is stranger than fiction. The story of the Jordan, Minnesota child abuse ring is one of the most disturbing ever told, and it was completely covered up by the United States government. Join us today as we expose these secrets that have remained hidden for over 40 years and investigate claims of murder, child abuse, and Satanism in the small town of Jordan, Minnesota.
And just like that, so does the Epstein files gets forgotten.
A physician in the 1940s ran a 10-year feeding experiment on cats. What he found terrified him, and medicine buried it for 50 years. His name was Dr. Francis Pottinger Jr. He divided cats into two groups. One group ate raw, nutrient-dense food. The other group ate cooked and pasteurized food. The same processing methods applied to the human food supply. The first generation on processed food had some health decline. Second generation, dental problems, narrow facial structure, and reduced bone density. The third generation, they could not reproduce. Not reduced reproduction, no reproduction. The line ended. And when he returned those cats to an ancestral diet, it took 4 generations to fully recover. 4 generations. Think about what that means for what you and I are dealing with right now. We're not the first generation to eat this way. We're the third or fourth. Follow for more high-performance health content that respects the depth of this huge problem.
How the hell did the Academy not award Val Kilmer with a nomination for his portrayal of Jim Morrison in Oliver Stone's The Doors? Anyway, there is one scene in The Doors that really stuck with me for decades. Jim Morrison, as a child, that's Oliver Stone's real son, by the way, sees a Native American die. It seems like a hallucination almost, but really it represents a spiritual awakening through death. According to Morrison's own mythology, he witnessed Native Americans dying on the side of the road as a child, and he believed their souls entered him. Whether literal or symbolic, Oliver Stone presents the moment like a possession, like Jim becoming spiritually marked. And that's why this Native American figure keeps reappearing throughout the film. He arrives when Morrison drifts deeper into altered consciousness, when he's taking psychedelics and basically self-destructing. That Native American figure is like a spirit that's guiding him between worlds. And spiritually, Native American symbolism in the film The Doors connects directly to ancient ideas surrounding transcendence and nature, vision quests, and communion with unseen reality. Morrison rejects ordinary American culture because he believes modern society disconnected itself from primal spiritual truth. And that Native American figure represented the opposite. This is untamed consciousness connected to spirit, connected to death, connected to life itself. And that's why Jim became obsessed with breaking boundaries. All the music and the drugs, the poetry, he treats it like doorways into other realms of consciousness. into hidden states of awareness. The band's name is The Doors. It's taken from Aldous Huxley's idea that once the doors of perception are open, human beings encounter reality beyond ordinary consciousness. And that Native American spirit is the first door that Jim Morrison walks through, a messenger from death awakening him to another level of existence. That Native American symbol is far more than just a ghost in the film. It's both beautiful and haunting because he never learns how to balance both. He keeps pushing himself deeper into chaos, searching for transcendence until that search eventually consumes him. This film, The Doors, is about Jim Morrison being stuck between two worlds, and the unseen world calling him deeper into it. What'd you think of Oliver Stone's The Doors? Drop a comment. Don't forget to follow, like, share, and favorite for more deep dives into how did Val not get an Oscar nomination?
How did he die again? Is it overdose or AIDS?
I'm gonna hold your
HIV.
hand when I say this. It's gonna piss a lot of you off. Jeffrey Epstein is one of our greatest teachers. Carl Jung called the rejected, denied, and repressed parts of the self our shadow. There's also collective shadow, rejected parts of society. We don't acknowledge the shadow. We project it onto others. Collective will seek out figures to be their villain who have the traits that they don't want to acknowledge within the collective. These figures become symbols of everything that's wrong within a society, sometimes called semiotics of evil. It allows us to locate this big force of evil, gives a sense of order. Because I am not that. It's an easy place for the collective to direct its outrage, disgust, and anger. This man is a symbol of something that has been happening on this planet for hundreds of thousands of years. Did he create the problem? No, he definitely capitalized on it. Now everyone wants answers and justice, rightfully so. Deserves to have your anger and outrage and disgust directed at him. When is the collective going to ask themselves, why is barely legal the biggest genres in adult entertainment? Why is it when a little girl from YouTube turns 18 years old, makes millions of dollars on her birthday on OnlyFans? Why are women encouraged to be hairless, a sign of being young and pubescent? Why are 20-year-old girls encouraged to get Botox, preventative for wrinkles? Why is aging in women treated like a disease that needs medical intervention? Why are cultures and religions all around the world obsessed with women's virginity? Why is Jesus' mom in the Bible like 12 years old? Why
No, it's not. Come on, man. That's blasphemy.
does she need to be a virgin to be worthy
12 years old.
of birthing him? When are we going to stop pretending that this is about one man? This is about a deep sexual obsession that humanity has with innocence, purity, and youth. It has been normalized for thousands of years. Finally took one soul, be the dude, for finally everybody to say, damn, people shouldn't be doing that. Society doesn't change by getting better at identifying who the monsters are. It changes when we get honest about what created this monster. Ask yourself, what's in your search history? What have you normalized? What world are we still creating? 18-year-old girls feel the need to get on OnlyFans. Oh, thank you, Jeffrey Epstein. Society finally agrees. Innocence should be protected.
Man, you lost me for Mary being 12 years old.
The new Epstein file release just proves one thing that nobody's talking about, and it's the fact that the Antichrist is here. He's not coming. And for quite a while, for a long time, people have been focusing on the Antichrist being some hunchback, one bulging eye like a grape creature running around, and it let their guard down. Nobody was paying attention to the fact that the Antichrist or the Dajjal method or the Dajjal system is not this in the flesh, but the Antichrist or the Dajjal, the thing that goes against God, goes against our Creator, and goes against the prophet of the Creator, does not have to be in the flesh. This is an energy. This is something that has came here to destroy us. And yes, me, like many others, we do talk about worldly things. We talk about the results or the outcomes of these negative things in the flesh, but do not think for 1 second that it stops at the flesh. This is a spiritual war. This is a war on your soul. These are demons coming to take your life. They are trying to pull your soul into such a misery that you feel the same pain that they suffer on a daily basis.
bases. Their whole philosophy is, I'm already going to hell, so let's make sure everybody fries. No politician is your friend, not a Democrat, and sure as hell not a Republican either. This is not a left, this is not a right, this is all of them. And when you sit here and tie your identity to things outside of God, outside of being religious and a connection with our Creator, you will always fail because you are leaning into your ego. Your ego is your pride, and pride is the devil.
Okay, but a physical being will come. This is just some practices to make his coming easy.
This man is the reason a lot of parents started telling their children, don't talk to strangers. This is the story of the monster who went by the name Dean Corll, also known as the Candyman. Also, guys, warning, this case is very brutal and very distressing. You've been warned. As always, guys, this will be a condensed version for TikTok. You want the more in-depth video? Let me know. Christmas Eve in 1939, a monster was born. Dean's mother owned the Corll Candy Company and in later years appointed him vice president. Later that year, his mother fired a teenage employee who accused Dean of making advances towards him. After some time in the military, Dean returned home and started working for the candy company again. The town had given him the name the Candyman because he was always giving out candy to children. In 1967, he met 12-year-old David Brooks, who came from a broken home and locked onto Dean. After 2 years, he had groomed David into a relationship. In 1970, David walked in on Dean assaulting 2 young boys who were tied up, and Dean bribed him to keep him quiet. This escalated into Dean paying David for every victim he lured back to him. All the boys would be assaulted, tortured, and unalived. One of the ways that he would hurt the boys is the worst thing I have ever heard in my life. These victims included David's own friends. Later on, he introduced Dean to Elmer Wayne Henley. He decided to make Wayne an accomplice with David, even though some of Dean's victims were Wayne's friends that he would put up missing posters around the town to help find. Dean got them both to participate in what he called his slavery ring. Over the years, they brought Dean numerous young boys. But in 1973, it all changed. Wayne had lured back a 17-year-old boy who ended up bringing his 15-year-old girlfriend. Dean was furious a female was in his house, so he bound and gagged all 3 of them. Wayne convinced Dean to untie him so he could help him inflict pain on the other 2. Dean got to work on the boy while the girl looked at Wayne and screamed, "Are you going to do anything about it?" After everything, Wayne had had enough. He picked up the and pointed it at Dean. Dean started laughing maniacally and told Wayne he would never shoot him. Wayne responded by shooting him 6 times until he was unalived. He unbound the boy and the girl and they called the cops, where Wayne explained to them everything that had been going on over the years. A search of Dean's house and van showed how sadistic he was when he was inflicting pain on the boys. David Brooks and Wayne Henley both received life in prison. Dean Corll is suspected in numerous more disappearances that the boys didn't help him with, some of which he would sell into slavery. There is proof he was actually connected to something much bigger, along with John Wayne Gacy, but that's a story for a whole nother video.
They're saying that this live streamer filmed the entrance to the Hollow Earth. Yeah, so check this out. A couple months back, the Twitch streamer Ice Poseidon was using Starlink to stream his trip down to Antarctica when he ran into a glacial ice wall with some kind of entrance into it. It's kind of crazy. Yeah, no, this is actually just like an ice cave, probably hollowed out by meltwater, and this also happened in Patagonia, not Antarctica. But if you didn't know about the Hollow Earth theory, it's part like 6-7 of my comment section conspiracy iceberg, so let's talk about it. Now, this one goes all the way back to the 1600s when Edmund Halley, the guy who discovered Halley's Comet, came up with the idea that Earth was actually made up of several concentric spheres, kind of like a Russian nesting doll, which were all inhabitable and had luminous atmospheres, and that there could be life living below our surface world. And then in the 1800s, a man from Ohio named John Sims proposed the idea that the North and South poles were actually the entrances to reach these inner worlds. Now here's where it gets strange. In 1947, Admiral Richard Byrd led Operation High Jump to Antarctica. And there's all sorts of theories as to why, but when the mission arrived, it was said that Byrd and a couple crew members tried flying to the South Pole. But instead of flying over the frozen wasteland below and back to his fleet, Byrd describes something impossible in his diary about the trip. He reported seeing green valleys, large mammoth-like and other prehistoric creatures, along with a hidden landmass beyond the pole that shouldn't have been there. He was eventually intercepted by craft that looked like nothing he'd ever seen before, essentially your classic flying saucer UFO, and was escorted to land at this advanced-looking city, which some think may have been the mythical city of Agartha from esoteric traditions. Byrd then met with a representative from this unknown civilization and was warned that humanity's use of atomic weapons during World War II had drawn the attention of their civilization before being allowed to leave. Now, the authenticity of Byrd's journal is questionable, and science says the Earth isn't hollow, but If that's the case, why do we find anomalies in seismic data that doesn't perfectly match this model? And large cavern systems do exist across the world, both natural and man-made, which could house cities and secret civilizations. So what could be hiding down there that they don't want us to know about?
He SA'd and unalived her, and then stuffed and twisted her body into a toilet bowl. 7-year-old Charisse Iverson was left unsupervised at the
God.
casino arcade while her father was gambling. Security guards repeatedly reminded Charisse's father that it wasn't safe to leave Charisse unsupervised. Her father did not care and just continued gambling. Charisse ran into 18-year-old Jeremy Strawnmeyer and playfully threw wet napkins and a "Caution wet floor" sign at him. Jeremy did not like that, so he followed Charisse into the women's bathroom and then lured her into the handicap stall. Jeremy took all of Charisse's clothes off and then started to SA her while covering her mouth with his hand to muffle her screams. Jeremy's friend Cash told Jeremy to stop, but when he didn't stop, Cash just left the bathroom and let Jeremy continue to SA Charisse. Jeremy strangled Charisse and then twisted her neck to make sure that he had unalived her. Jeremy then proceeded to stuff Charisse's body into a toilet bowl. A security officer found Charisse's body and then alerted Charisse's father. Jeremy told Cash that he had unalived Charisse, and then the two boys just went about their night like nothing ever happened, just like normal. Jeremy was sentenced to 4 consecutive life sentences. Surprisingly, Cash was never sentenced or punished and peacefully graduated from UC Berkeley, which left the public outraged. But what do you guys think about this case?
Street justice.
Once I show you this one symbol in this book, you won't ever be able to look at it the same way again. At the end of Fear and Loathing's opening, we have Duke looking up at the sky in Vegas, but a neon sign is blocking it. And he says it looks like some kind of electric snake is coming at us. And what we don't notice in this moment is that we've heard this same sentiment only 700 years before. We have to pay attention to this one word. He says, "We were around Barstow when the drugs began to take hold." The other novel says, "Midway upon the journey of our life, I found myself within a dark forest, for the straightforward path has been lost." It's the exact same sentiment as Dante's Inferno. The key here is the word "are." Both of these stories want to use a pronoun to have you wake up in the story. Dante can't say how he entered the world, and Duke is way too fucked up to know how he got there as well. And then both reach the foot of the mountain and both encounter beasts. Dante climbs toward the mountain and 3 animals block him: a lion, a leopard, and a starving wolf. They bar his way and he has to turn back. That is why he has to go through hell. With Duke, we have the clerk that turned into a moray eel, we have the reptile zoo and the lobby and the whole 9. The point is that they ushered Duke along with press passes to get him out of the way. Where Dante's beasts guard the mountain, Duke's just usher him in because there's nothing in there to protect. And then both men look up. Dante can see the peak, the sunlit rays, the summit reminds him of the journey. But Duke looks up and sees an electric snake and a neon sign. The mountains are gone. Thompson blotted out Dante's summit with a Vegas sign. But I gotta be honest, Thompson isn't directly quoting Dante because Dante built hell layer by layer by layer. But Thompson was clear that where they are going, there is no heaven. By 1971, the summit had more than disappeared. And here's what Dante never had to question. With him, there was always an up. The summit reminded them the whole journey. But with Duke is different. He has the same descent, the same beast, the same lonely road, but instead of a summit to remind him, there's a neon snake blocking it. And Duke's question is the one that Dante never had to ask. What if the summit, what if the peak, what if heaven was gone? And if you can't find your way up, if the summit is gone, is a descent even a descent anymore, or is it just where you live now?
This is going to be a comprehensive overview of everything that's been dropped in the files thus
this
far.
is crazy.
So prepare yourself for some pretty
This guy's good.
graphic details. The ritualistic abuse and sacrifice of young children. We have Prince Andrew torturing and raping women to death. We have Jeffrey Epstein saying how Jews use and manipulate academic institutions and large markets to take money from the Goyim while the Goyim are left to slave away in the real world. You have Trump being allegedly in the files, forcing himself on young underage women. You have Bush with his ritualistic sacrifice, cutting people's feet and sacrificing them to some demonic god. You have Jeffrey Epstein's bank account being named Baal, the ritual god of human sacrifice. We have elites on both sides participating in cannibalism, ripping out children's organs and eating them after filling them with feces. Countless references to Pizzagate and very graphic messages talking about pizza, how it tastes, how to eat it, all these kind of things that it's obviously not about pizza. We have the creation of 4chan and Reddit to promote and push out psyops, the admittance to what happened in Libya. We have trash talk on Zelensky saying that he is a cokehead and he is completely run entirely by Israel. Elon Musk, who wanted to get on the island but couldn't get on the island, so they just didn't let him on. Epstein being blocked from Xbox. We have Bill Gates getting an STD from a Russian prostitute and then giving it to his wife, needing Epstein to help him out. We have Bush and Clinton both raping people who are boys and girls, presumably many more, but many names are redacted. You have the systematic raping of girls, forcing them into pregnancy, making them go to full term, and then sacrificing their children. Mentions of adrenochrome. This is after only being out for a day or two. I'm going to keep digging into these files probably over the next week or so. So follow if you want to stay updated. I will continue to put out everything that I find, reporting on the truth, whether it's comfortable or uncomfortable, I will bring it to you. And then after I dig through all the files, I will do my best to come up with some sort of actionable thing that, as an American citizen, you can actually do.
Wow. No such thing as an underage woman. They are underage girls, aka children.
This is going to be the biggest cluster, in the history of the world. I think this is going to be a complete mess. Literally, if this goes into full force, you're talking about moving into a slavery system where essentially your life can be controlled by people who make the rules very centrally and stripping you of any constitutional rights or property rights. We are taking an enormous amount of our personal and family wealth and putting it towards building a panopticon prison that's going to be used to control us. It's frightening.
The question, though, is this by design?
The master plan is to implement total control and to run a society with two sets of rules, one for a small group of oligarchs. So you have one group of people who apparently think they're going to live forever, and then you have another set of rules for everybody else, and you want to put them on a trajectory to steadily decline in terms of number of population.
When you speak of these oligarchs, who are they? What evidence convinces you that this is a coordinated effort?
They're a couple of years away from getting the basic infrastructure, underground cables, data centers, getting it all working. I think they are a couple of years away from getting the digital ID system really tight. I think they're moving very quickly on programmable money, particularly the stocks and bonds and the bank deposits. And so that is moving very fast. If you suck all that money out of local economies and out of the tax base, you implode the economy.
Are these political leaders pawns of what you consider is the master behind this plan? Are they actively involved? Are they fighting against this? How do you see all of this working with the current political leadership?
It's a public-private partnership, and it's much more terrifying than CBDCs because you have complete non-accountability. Take no comfort whatsoever. And if anything, it's a distraction and making you think that you're safe when you're not. If we fail and they get a complete control grid, that's not a world I want to live in anyway.
Greedy billionaires will end humanity.
This is The Real Story with Michelle McCory.
When I started to write what I really read in the Hebrew Bible, I was fired in 1 minute.
What?
Let us make man in our image. Man has become like one of us. Let us go down. Multiple divine figures in the Bible. Different name of gods in the Bible. If Elohim are not God, the Bible is entirely another book. So the Elohim were individuals in flesh and blood with a life longer, much longer than the life of humankind, but they were mortal. And the Elohim group of individuals, an higher civilization with higher knowledges and higher technology, higher powers, those are all flying objects that are clearly and precisely described technologically in the Bible. The system controlling the world is the system clearly described in the Bible. There are a sort of preparation.
Project Blue Beam.
If it was disclosed that the Bible translation is not correct and there are many beings and this is more of a historical book and these interpretations of God may actually be other beings from other worlds, do you think that would destroy these religions, or do you think they would adapt?
I think...
What role in the Middle East again does Israel play in this?
Israel was created as the instrument to bring about the Battle of Armageddon and the fulfillment of prophecy, a war that will be so terrible, where nuclear weapons will be used, so that the American citizens and the other people in the world will get down on their knees and beg for no more war. And what is the answer to that? They're going to be told the only way we can guarantee no more war is if we destroy the sovereignty of nations and we come together as one humanity in a one world government.
Right. Okay. And the Jewish people were then being manipulated into believing it was for some other reason.
That's correct. They've always been manipulated. And I get people who still come to me all the time and say, Bill, you're all wrong. It's the Jews. The Jews are subverting the world. Man, it's not the Jews. It's not the Catholics. It's not the blacks. It's these men who belong to the ancient mystery schools, who meet in secret and decide the fate of the world. And they belong to all different races and all different nationalities and all different religions to the public point of view. But in secret, it's a different story. At the highest levels of all countries, they all belong to the same club. And we, the people, sit back and we watch this grand drama, which is being played out for our benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Not theirs. If it wasn't for us, they wouldn't even have to do any of this. But you see, they just can't come out and destroy all of us because they need slaves. They need people to make their shoes, and make their cars, and mine the ore. They need worker bees, and that's what we are. In the New World Order, we will be the worker bees, the slaves.
Now, reason number 7. This is an interesting one. Eyewitness accounts of alien encounters often include the detail of smelling a burned atmospheric, that burned ozone, brimstone, or sulfur odor. And exorcists will tell you, this goes all the way back for 2,000 years. The smell of sulfur, brimstone, is a classic sign of demonic presence and demonic possession. There are many historic parallels in the lives of the saints, over and over and over, of smelling sulfur when engaging with the demonic. And wouldn't you know it, people report the same odor, the same smell when they interact with aliens. I think that's an interesting one. I think it's worth noting.
Fallen angels, Nephilim, demons, not aliens.
The person who sent this to you wants you to know who is really deciding what your children learn in school. Why were we, along with children today, taught about Martin Luther King but not Malcolm X?
The whole world must see that Israel must exist and has a right to exist and is one of the great outposts of democracy in the world.
Now let us compare that to Malcolm X.
Palestinian struggle is not just a cry for justice. It's a blistering battle for the most fundamental human rights that every living soul on this planet should inherit by birthright. It's an unyielding resistance against the oppressive, suffocating grip of occupation and the callous denial of the most basic human dignity.
But what did Martin Luther King have to say about anti-Semitism?
My Jewish brothers and sisters said to me amid anti-Semitism anywhere, we don't need
your support, we have enough Jewish power to deal with this problem ourselves.
But what did Malcolm X have to say about it?
Are you anti-Semitic?
Anti-Semitic?
You've many of the things that I've read about you, and you've made a mention a couple of times about the Jews and everything, and I'm wondering if you are personally anti-Semitic.
No. How can I be anti-Semitic when the Arabs are half the Muslim world is Semitic? If I was anti-Semitic, I'd be anti-Arab and anti-everything else. No, I think that in this country, there's one mistake that the Jews make. They put themselves in a position where whenever anybody gives an objective analysis of the role that they play, they defend themselves by accusing you of being anti-Semitic.
The contrast between the two is clear, and while Martin Luther King's speechwriter was Jewish, even having written his famous speech, "I Have a Dream," Malcolm X was more sympathetic to the Palestinian state. But how did it happen that only one of them was taught in schools while the other was hardly mentioned? Why does one get a national holiday and endless praise and the other gets memory hold? This is where Robert Maxwell comes in. Robert Maxwell is Ghislaine Maxwell's father, and they documented Mossad agent. Robert Maxwell bought the major publishing company Macmillan and used it to control the contents of the textbooks distributed to American school children across the entire country.
Wow.
They are quite literally controlling our future by rewriting our past.
Have you ever heard of the rumors of the secret society of vampires in LA? Well, take a look at this footage that was captured by a witness who was walking down a boulevard in Los Angeles. She saw this
I think this is a movie scene. What do you think?
unidentified person or being. She assumed it was an alien, but this doesn't look like I would say an alien. This almost looks like a vampire, a very old one. Now, it could very well be somebody in a costume and a mask doing cosplay.
He knows too.
But look closely. Do you see any mask lines? And if this is makeup, it is incredible. Could this be finally a sign that they're coming out and not afraid to hide in the shadows any longer? Or is it all in our head? Comment below. Tell us what you think.
I don't care. I think he's meant to be seen. Ooh, he's so creepy. Oh my god.
So creepy.
I think he's meant to be seen.
I mean about them playing these ancient Egyptian games. So someone posts from Charlie Kirk's account on Juneteenth. The exact same weekend, there's a death hoax about Candace Owens. Now Candace is pregnant with her 5th child. If you go back to some of my older videos about the political games of ancient Egypt that are played through American politics, you'll see where I'm going with this. Because when Candace's podcast blew up after the death of Charlie Kirk, I kept telling people it was meant to symbolize the loss of freedom. Charlie Kirk, Charles means free man, and Kirk means church. Candace is a devout member, allegedly, of the Roman Catholic Church. And I said several times to pay attention to the titles of these episodes she was putting out. Pay attention to the story she's telling. A good storyteller is going to have you reeled in. There won't be a moment of doubt for most people who are subscribed to the program, right? And then when she just talked a couple weeks ago about being in Russia, being there with Andrew Tate, it just kept giving me the same story of Isis and Nephthys resurrecting Osiris to birth Horus. But it's all symbolic, right? Charlie Kirk was referred to by Donald Trump himself as a champion of liberty. Mind you, this happened 1 year, actually less than a year before America's 250th birthday. And like when people are arguing about whether they're left or right-wing politicians, I think it's hilarious because it's the same bird. And that bird is Horus. So, you know, there are people saying, oh, Candace should be president and she's giving us the truth. She's giving you a horse and pony show. Both of them are actually, they're both the grieving widow of Charlie. Even though Candace is technically married to George Farmer and Erica Kirk is married to the game. I don't know, chalk it up to the game. But I encourage you, if you're not familiar with the stories, to look into Isis and Horus and Osiris. And it doesn't matter if you're a practicing Catholic, right? Because whether you are a Mason, which she has said that she is, no matter in what context, she told you she's a builder. She knows how to build.
and this includes a good story. We're still talking about the axing off of liberty of the free church. That's what his name means free man and church. What happens in the mythology? Isis and Nephthys, his wife and sister, mourn him, search for his body, go on podcasts and talk for months at a time. And wasn't she supposed to be pregnant too? I don't know. They changed their story so much. But these are political mind games, so get with the program. Not their program, your own program.
All right. Thank you.
After you're done watching this, you will start to question your entire life. So this bizarre experiment exposed something very wild about human behavior. Scientists put 5 monkeys in a room. In the middle of the room, a ladder. And at the top of the ladder, bananas. Every time one of the monkeys tried climbing the ladder to grab the bananas, the scientists sprayed all of them with freezing cold water. So naturally, after a while, the monkeys learned. Touch the ladder, everybody suffers. So they stopped trying. But then the scientists did something really weird. They removed one monkey and replaced it with a brand new one. Now, obviously, the new monkey sees bananas and thinks, jackpot! So it runs for the ladder. But before it can even reach the bananas, the other monkeys start to pull it back down. Eventually, the new monkey learns, don't touch the ladder, even though it never got sprayed with cold water. Then they replaced another monkey until eventually none of the original monkeys were left, meaning none of the monkeys in that room had ever actually experienced the punishment. And yet none of them would touch the ladder. Why? Because that's just how things were done. Sound familiar? Because a lot of people are living by rules right now that they never question. Limits that they have accepted, not because they're true, but because nobody ever asked why. Where are you
Good
staying
point.
limited right now and never stop to question?
All right. Thank you for staying till the end. I hope you like my lineup. Don't forget to subscribe, likes, and hit the bell so you don't miss my video. All right. Follow me on Instagram at Brosky Ray. Have a wonderful day and God bless.